A race that's down to the wire. Turkey is gripped in a presidential race that's gone into the second round. The two contenders, incumbent President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and opposition leader Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu, have both failed to secure an outright majority in the first round, which took place on May the 14th. Among the host of factors that have contributed to the situation, the economy figures heavily. After a decade of robust growth, Turkish economy has experienced runaway inflation that went as high as 85% last October. This is a problem the country was not unfamiliar with, but given the more difficult relations between Erdogan and the West, how are economic woes shaping the political landscape? Has President Erdogan's recipe to fight inflation with lowering interest rates stopped to work? And how tough will the job be for whoever to emerge from the second round? I'm pleased to be joined from Zhuhai in southern China's Guangdong province by Selcuk Colakoglu, Associate Professor of the Globalization and Development Program at the Beijing Normal University, Hong Kong Baptist University, United International College, who is also founding director of the think tank Turkish Center for Asia-Pacific Studies. And I'm pleased to be joined from Xi'an, capital of northwest China's Shanxi province, by Wang, Associate Professor of Middle Eastern Studies at China Northwest University. Gentlemen, welcome to The Point. So, Professor Colakoglu, let me go to you first. Turkish Supreme Election Council said that neither of incumbent President Erdogan or his rival Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu secured more than 50% of the votes. That's why they're going into the second round. So, help us understand what really caused the nail-biter race at this moment, and what does this election mean for the future of the nation?
This election is very critical for Turkish politics and Turkey's direction particularly. And during the election campaigns and afterwards, so both leading candidates and now they will run again in the runoff second round. They pledge and they offer more economic boom and more economic progress for all segments of society and also for all sectors of life. This is, I think, very critical in that regard. So the presidential candidates during the first round, they pledge or they promote some economic policies, some economic packages for different groups, different segments of societies. This, I think, will continue during the runoff process, and they try to persuade Turkish voters how they will be successful in near future to get more economic progress, more economic development, and they will create more jobs for everyone. So this is the critical point for election, the candidates of presidential race to persuade their voters.
Yeah, Professor Wang, how critical, how challenging is that job to promise to solve the economic woes that the country has been facing? As I said, inflation has been very high. Last October, the rate was 85%. That was the highest in 2 decades. And the Turkish lira has also been plunging since 2 years ago and sank to a record low these days. Help us understand how big of a problem Turkish leaders are facing in terms of its economy.
Well, in short, the biggest challenge of Turkey's economy, the Turkey's economic scope is actually withdrawing and is becoming smaller and smaller in terms of United States dollars. On the one hand, you mentioned that Turkish currency lira actually is on the trend of inflation, so that leads to the economic activities in the Turkish market also decrease. And then on the other hand, the investment from the foreign countries, due to a lot of reasons, for example, the activity in the world market also decreased, and also the interest from the Western countries also increased. So the investment from the other countries into the Turkish market also decreased. That leads to the growing high levels of unemployment, and also further growing of the inflation of the Turkish currency. So no matter who wins the future election, no matter who becomes the new president, they have to face a very, very complicating and very, very difficult situations of to improve and to develop Turkish economic activities, to reshape the Turkish economic policy, to give and encourage more confidence to the Turkish investors, to help them to improve the Turkish economic situations.
Professor Colakoglu, what do you think is the biggest problem the Turkish economy is faced with at this moment? The inflation or the value of the Turkish lira, of course, is symptoms of the problem. What do you think is lying at the bottom of the situation?
So, of course, high inflation rate is a big problem for Turkish economy. But on the other, the next Turkish government, next president, will likely create more jobs. So then creating more jobs, but on the other, controlling the inflation. So it is a very difficult task. For that, the next leader of Turkey and the next government of Turkey will try to find foreign financial resources from international financial institutions or from different countries, so getting more financial flow to Turkish market, particularly Turkish stock exchange, and also for the Turkish finance system. And the other thing for control the inflation, and on the one side, and also creating new jobs, foreign direct investments from different countries are very important to the country. So the next Turkish government will focus on these tough economic issues. But also there is another challenge. There is a slowdown and high inflation in global economy too. So under these very uncertain future of the world economy, so the next Turkish government will try to fix all these problems together without creating further economic difficulties within the country.
Well, what are the different proposals the two contenders are coming up with in terms of solving these problems? Mr. Erdogan had a very good performance in terms of spurring economic development in the early years of his presidency or his leadership, but over the past few years, situation has not been so rosy. So what is he proposing? And in terms of economic policy, what is his contender, Mr. Kılıçdaroğlu, is proposing?
In fact, both leaders also offering the same thing. So getting more international investments to the country, and also getting also financial flow to Turkey and boom the Turkey's manufacturing units for that. During the election campaigns, for example, President Erdogan also put on the agenda for increasing defense industry products for Turkey. Also, Turkey is gaining some income from the sale of these Turkish defense products. But on the other, the opposition candidate Kılıçdaroğlu and his economic team offered to further integration with the European Union, and also updating the customs union with the European Union will provide further advantages for Turkish economy for that. So their pledges are very close to each other, and they try to persuade their supporters they will be more successful and to fix the Turkish economic problems in coming months and in early years of their governments. So in that regard, it is very neck and neck, and also economic policies are very close to each other. So then we cannot say that there are very huge differences for that. But they are very similar economic agendas. But the concern is there, the high inflation, the combating high inflation and creating more jobs, and keep the Turkey's growth on track around 5%.
Professor Wang, what is your take on the situation? For instance, the prospect of more integration with the European Union on the economic front. How realistic is that going to be, given the very treacherous road Turkey has traveled in terms of applying for EU membership?
I think there will be the very critical time for the Turkish relations with the EU after this election, because if of course there were some kind of systematic problem. No matter who win the election, both of them have to face this kind of problem. For example, the refugee problems, the Turkish very problematic relations with Greece, with Cyprus. And also with other European countries, because due to the maritime disputes and also other kind of the historic and religious disputes. So these kind of the problem will be remain there and also become the obstacles for the Turkish relations with its membership of the United Nations. So no matter who wins the election, they also have to face this kind of problem. But this might some kind of the transformation or some kind of the new changes after this election, because I think for the both leaders, if they want to improve their economic situation inside Turkey, they have to adopt the new policies, not only the neighboring countries, but also to adopt the new policies to improve their relations with the European countries and other countries, to attract more investment from these countries, to decrease the unemployment risks, as well as to increase the economic activities inside the Turkish market. So no matter who wins the election, that will be the critical time for their economy.
Yeah, given the kind of attitude or relationship between President Erdogan and Russian President Vladimir Putin, how much of a prospect is there, Professor Colakoglu, for Turkey to have a more harmonious economic and trade relationship with the European Union?
So far, Ankara followed very balanced relationship, particularly outbreak of the Russia-Ukraine conflict in general. So Turkish economy is very dependent on the European market, but on the other, Russia is very big economic partner for Turkey, providing gas and oil to Turkish market, and also Turkish export goods are seeking more larger share in the Russian market too. In that regard, keeping this balanced relationship is very important to keep economic stability in the country. So in that regard, both the front runners of the presidential elections also offering balanced and also more economic development with the increasing cooperation with leading world economies in that regard. After the election, I think whoever wins, whoever comes to power, the first priority to fix all political relations and also keeping away from the risky areas for political relations, and also promote the economic cooperation with all leading economic partners of Turkey. So this will be the main issue for the next government of Turkey.